This is Bonjour Chai, the Bot Rabbis for Jesus edition. I'm Avi Feingold, and I'm here with Phoebe Maltzbovy. We are your Frozen Chosen. On today's episode, we are all in on strange bedfellows in the Jewish community. We talk about Israel's attempt to influence American politicians. We talk about dual loyalties and how Jews vote. And we have an interview with Rabbi Michael Skobach of Jews for Judaism about a rally against anti-Semitism taking place in New York. All this and more. Stay tuned. Phoebe, how's it going?
All right. How are you doing, Avi?
I am well. Today we're talking about allies. And it is also the day which the allies have a notable day in history, right?
Yes, I'm very glad that the allies won the war. The term ally seems to have taken on a different meaning. It used to refer specifically to the Second World War and all of that. These days, it seems to mean more joining forces with a marginalized population, but not being a part of it yourself.
I think ally was the term for people that were woke before the term woke became a term. I think it predates it.
I guess, although it depends who you're an ally of. So this is an interesting question that we're going to be talking about on the show today, which is that who are Jews' allies these days? What does it mean to be an ally of Jews? Because it's
interesting that the non-woke people, or the people that are anti-woke, have not yet resorted to calling themselves the Axis.
Avi, this is what you're this is what you're here for. Thank you.
Yes, so we are going to talk about some what I would refer to as strange bedfellows. There was an article in the New York Times that had some really interesting story about foreign interference in U.S. life. So
the article is called "Israel Secretly Targets U.S. Lawmakers with Influence Campaign on Gaza War," and this is by Shira Frankel, reporting from Tel Aviv. And basically, the Israel's Ministry of Diaspora Affairs made some bots to be our bot allies, be the bot allies of the Jewish people, right? Or the bot allies, more specifically, of the state of Israel, and more specifically, bot supporters of Israel's campaign in Gaza. Now, foreign interference, sketchy at the best of times. This was a more demonstrable case thereof. That's why this is significant. So another quote from the article: "The operation is the first documented case of the Israeli government organizing a campaign to influence U.S. government," social media experts said. Okay, so it doesn't seem like they really got very far. So these AI-assisted fake people on the internet didn't really get much of a following. It doesn't seem that they've actually made much headway. And then here, the effort was sloppy. Profile pictures used in some accounts sometimes didn't match the fictional personas they cultivated, and the language used in posts was stilted. In at least 2 instances, accounts with profile photos of black men posted about being a, quote, middle-aged Jewish woman, end quote. On 118 posts in which the fake accounts shared pro-Israel articles, the same sentence appeared: "I gotta reevaluate my opinions due to this new information," end quote. Okay, so I read this, and I mean, a part of me just found this very funny, but I was also thinking about how there's so much discussion of there's no one way to look like a Jew, that everybody looks different ways, men look all different ways, women look all different ways, black people look all different ways, white people look all different ways. Well, who's to say this photo of a black man isn't a photo of a middle-aged Jewish woman? So
what's the story here? Is it that Israel is trying to engage in foreign interference like everybody else is, or is it that Israel is so incompetent about it?
The story is that there is a sense that it's so hard to find somebody who supports Israel's war in Gaza that they had to get robots to do it.
Well, I mean,
maybe.
Why do other countries try to engage in foreign interference?
I mean, so the article makes it clear that it's not only Israel doing it. And I think that is an important point, that this is not something unique to Israel. Why, in this case, it seemed to be that there was a sense that Americans who are, on the whole, rather pro-Israel were not loving this war.
And that they were having a hard time finding real people to make this work. I don't know if it's that they were having a hard time. My sense is that it's probably a lot cheaper and easier to just create a fake thing, because it's 4 people that can just sit there at computers all day and get ChatGPT to generate all sorts of stuff. And then instead of having to go and have an extensive campaign to find all of these people and create actual stuff, it's easier to just make it up.
Well, you're changing things. I mean, it's the fake. It is fake news.
I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that instead of having to go and look for this, it's a lot easier to be fake than it is to be real. I feel like that's not necessarily the impetus when Russia and China tried to do it. I think that they are trying to do some things that are and they're trying to a lot harder and trying to work a lot deeper and be real with it. And it's still fake news and it's still bad. But it seemed like this was, to me, the whole thing is that the incompetence of it all and the hack job of it. And like some guy went to his, like, you know, was in the Knesset and was like, or in the war room there and was like, my cousin Shmulik, he's going to take care. I'm channeling my inner Leah Leibovitz. My cousin Shmulik is going to take care of this. Is good. He has company. Sion is going to be good in Tel Aviv. We're going to make it.
And Avi, you're canceled for making Israeli accent.
I can make an Israeli accent. I think that's like acceptable.
I think so. I don't know. It's a cultural appropriation.
It's my culture.
Yeah, well.
That to me is really more about it. Israel used to be so competent at everything that they did, and now they're incompetent in war, they're incompetent in information war, and they're just, you know, so easy for them to be found out. Whereas with other foreign interference, it took years and years to like uncover it. And, you know, I'm thinking about our Canadian scandal around foreign interference, where it was actual members of parliament is what we understand is like, it was part of this. And that makes it that much, you know, worse and more worthy of discussion. And, you know, Israel can't seem to catch a break. And maybe rightfully so. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you don't really hear so much discussion of, well, isn't Canada embarrassing now, despite it seems like there's a spot of foreign interference going on.
I guess it does lead to the larger question of what do you think of the nature of, even if these people were real, even if they were trying to cultivate actual hearts and minds from people on, you know, a side of the political spectrum that you wouldn't otherwise have, right? Because that's a big part of what was going on in the article, right? Or with what they were trying to do was they weren't trying to convince Republican senators and members of Congress. They were trying to convince Democratic ones because presumably those people, you know, don't have the same level of support, and Jews, as a result, you know, have an ambivalent relationship with a lot of people as a result of that, and voting for somebody based on what they believe in, as, you know, vis-a-vis Israel, is a big topic or not. Like, I think that, you know, for so many Jews, it is the topic, and I think that it's kind of sketchy and scary to me.
I would break this up into two separate questions. One is, how much should one care about Israel as a topic when voting, and the other is, what does it even mean to be pro-Israel? Because I think you could, by certain pro-Israel standards, say that like the perfect politician to support would be Bernie Sanders. You could say, okay, well, he's Jewish. He clearly has, he's clearly somebody who does care about the Jewish people, who also is not afraid to be critical of the state of Israel when it does things that it shouldn't do. You could say, okay, well, that's one way to be pro-Israel. So I think you don't want to be credulous when a group of people says that they are pro-Israel and assume that that means the same thing you would necessarily expect it to mean, right? Like, you have to separate out, like, do you even, but then there's also just maybe not caring about it at all, or rather just having other things you care about, which in the US at this point, if you care about reproductive rights, you have to vote for Democrats because that's just how it is. Mm-hmm. And if that's your overarching concern, and so then same with other issues, if those are your overarching concern. But yeah, so those are two separate questions. What does it even mean to be pro-Israel, and how much you even care about this as a topic?
Yeah, my sense has always been that many Jews do use Israel as the voting,
right.
deciding factor.
Just one thing I was going to add is that for me, I am Canadian now, I'm also still American, I am a Democrat. My type of pro-Israel is not in conflict with my other general views on things, so I do not end up in this conundrum.
Sure, but if you have a member of parliament who you think is great for your district, great for your riding, and great for the country as a party, and yet doesn't have the same position vis-a-vis Israel or vis-a-vis, something else that you care about deeply, you shouldn't do this vote with your conscience and say, well, Israel is the most important thing.
But why shouldn't you just decide what's the most important thing? Like, why is that the one that you shouldn't? Why can't you just, if that is the most important thing?
I'm conflicted about that, because I think that there are people who are genuinely bad for the country that they are in, and yet because they are staunchly
pro-Israel. Isn't this just how voting? I feel like voting is always a bit like if you vote for low taxes because you don't that's not really necessarily for the public good. You know what I mean? Like, but it could be. I think people vote for all sorts of reasons, and they're not always so noble.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really
could I maybe
stuck on this.
Try that? Maybe I think what is it possible that some of what you're saying is that you don't think Jewish communal organizations should urge the Jewish community to do this
I think that is true as well. But I think that I guess what I'm trying to say is that as much as you care about Israel, domestic issues should always trump foreign issues. But that's, I guess that's my personal opinion and my approach to things, and I can see why people disagree with it. But that's, I don't know. It makes me feel icky a little bit. And I don't like this because does it open it up to dual loyalty? I was literally about to say that. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's that. But I guess I care about my neighborhood and my, the world that I currently live in more than I care about sometimes the world beyond. And it's not like these people are actively undermining Israel and they're just being neutral or different. They're not like, That's why I feel like a little bit of this in the U.S. context always feels a little silly because by most international standards, the U.S. Democratic Party is not exactly like a hotbed of anti-Semitism or anti-Israel sentiment, to say the least. So this always, to me, has felt like a false choice because I've had arguments, including with family members over the years, about this idea that, even if you're socially liberal, you should align yourself with the Republicans because Israel. And it just seemed like a false choice. It seemed not necessary in the U.S. to do that. In Canada, I think it's still a bit of a false choice, but a little bit less of one maybe than in the States. I'm wondering, and I don't have an answer for this, maybe you do, in terms of like a chicken and egg sort of thing, do you think that the people that have become more complicated on their Zionism, on their support of Israel in the past little while is because they see this happening and they are moved to change? Or do you think that some of it is because they are so staunchly, for example, when you said reproductive rights, they're really stands up for reproductive rights, and they're like, well, if I vote for this group, if I'm pro the squad, then they must be right on all the issues, and therefore I guess I realize that Israel is a lot more complicated, right? This idea of like the bucket of values that you choose.
The omni-cause, people like to call it now.
Yes, the omni-cause. That sounds like...
I don't remember who coined this, but this is...
I don't like it.
This whole thing of like people saying that Jerry Seinfeld isn't funny. And then I've seen people I know no, Jerry Seinfeld is funny. Like, you may not like what he says about Israel now, but he's funny because he's Jerry Seinfeld. And, so I think there has been some pushback, but I'm saying that I think there is a tremendous amount of polarization and this idea that you have to put your political team before all fandoms, before, that has to be the only thing that matters.
Yeah, I'm not justifying it, but when you're saying that, it makes it understandable why Israel would want to influence, the left, right, to call it that, because it's so important to them that this is going to happen. If it was really important, they could have done it in a less half-assed manner. Speaking of the quote-unquote strange bedfellows, and we just brought up the Christian relationship with Jews in various parts of the Jewish community, we have an interview coming up with Rabbi Michael Skobach about a very specific incident that is happening or that is unfolding in New York right now, where a rally is being held against anti-Semitism by an organization that is Christian and tries to evangelize to Jews. So I think that should be kind of interesting.
I can't date women right now because I'm too busy calling myself a piece of shit.
I had a dysfunctional Jewish mother and I had a dysfunctional Native mother.
I had 25 full years of utter struggle and failure.
I started to realize the absurdity of my inability to let go of this monster of guilt.
Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Hi, I'm Ralph Benrig. I'm the host of Not That Kind of Rabbi, where we look at people's spiritual journeys and take a little time for their self-reflection, and maybe yours. You can get it all at thecjn.ca/NTKR or wherever you get your podcasts.
an article in the foreword alerted us here at Bonjour Chai to the fact that there was a rally being organized on June 20th in New York called Oppose Anti-Semitism, Stop the Hate. And this rally was being organized by Chosen People Ministries, which is an organization that is, broadly speaking, a Messianic Jewish organization that seeks to evangelize and proselytize to Jews about how they can be Jewish and be Christian at the same time. This has really led to some interesting questions that we've been talking about on the show today about strange bedfellows and the relationships that we have with non-Jewish organizations or causes that we support as well. But in this specific case, it gets a little messier and stickier, and we decided that we would want to talk to somebody who's an expert about this. We decided to bring in Rabbi Michael Skobak. Rabbi Skobak is the Director of Education and Counseling for Jews for Judaism in Canada. Michael, welcome to Bonjour Chai.
Great to be here with you.
I might add that Michael's also been a friend we have a relationship going back over 20 years, I'd say. Broadly speaking, what is Messianic Judaism? What is colloquially referred to as Jews for Jesus, but we know that that's a subset of that. If you give us a bit of the background on what that is.
Okay, so we know that Christianity, going back to its inception, had a particularly strong focus on bringing Jews into the movement. Jesus himself said throughout the Gospels to his disciples, he says, don't go to the cities of the Gentiles. He says, I've only come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And then you see Paul, who is the major architect and promoter of this movement. He teaches in the book of Romans that the gospel, the good news about Jesus dying for your sins, Paul says, has to go to the Jew first, and then to the Greek, meaning then to non-Jews. And so this has always been a very, very important part for many reasons. It's not necessary for us to go into it now, but the church has always been extremely invested in reaching Jewish people and to basically save our souls. They believe that unless a person comes to faith in Jesus, you face an eternity burning in hell forever. There are other reasons beyond that, because that would explain why the church seeks to convert everyone. But why Jews are a special project is really a long discussion. In any event, the reality is that for the course of Christian history, the church was always dismally unsuccessful in converting Jews. Literally, the church, as we know, when you think about it, began with 12 Jewish guys. And it spread to the entire world, where today, in effect, North America is the default religion is Christian. South America, the default religion is Christian. Europe, at least for now, the default religion is Christian. And Christianity is growing in Asia, in Australia, and other parts in Africa, of course. But the Jewish people were always this unreached people that the church was always very frustrated. So going back to the 1950s, 1960s, they began having these international conferences dedicated to this question. It was called the Lausanne Conference on Jewish Evangelism. And the movers and the shakers from all over the Christian world really met. They strategized, how can we be more successful in reaching Jews? And it's really there where this strategy of, in a sense, formatting Christianity to appear Jewish was developed in a way to make Christianity more palatable to Jews, because they realized that Jewish people, even though they may be not involved in a Jewish community, they may not be affiliated Jewishly, they may have very few real strong Jewish community commitments, they came to see that Jewish people have an extremely strong sense of identity. And even Jews who may have no other connection to Judaism, they realize that these are people that would say, look, I was born a Jew, I'm going to die a Jew, I'm not converting to something else. So the sales pitch basically became that when you embrace Jesus, you're not converting to another religion. In effect, you're really becoming a more fulfilled Jew, a completed Jew. And the way they're able to convey this, how do you convince Jewish people that it's Jewish to believe in Jesus. I mean, that was always the main objection. Jewish people would always say to Christians, but I'm a Jew, but I'm Jewish, meaning that the implication is you can't be a Jew and believe in Jesus. So the sales pitch became that no, you can. And the way this was demonstrated was through essentially the Jews for Jesus / Messianic Jewish movement, where now you can take a Jewish person to a Messianic synagogue. You don't need to take them to the Second Baptist Church across the street. You take them to a synagogue that has a name like Petach Tikva or Tikvat Shalom. There's a congregation in Dallas called Congregation Baruch Hashem, and the person leading the services is not called a minister or a priest. They're called a Messianic rabbi. There are no crosses or stained glass pictures of Jesus in these places. All the artwork, all the imagery is very Jewish. You'll have Jewish stars, Israeli flags. Inside the Messianic congregation, you'll have an ark with a Torah scroll. They will not have, Sunday services so much. It'll be a Shabbat services. They'll celebrate all the Jewish holidays, everything. There's no Christmas, there's no Easter, but they'll basically, in a sense, reframe all of Judaism with the Christian slant. So, for example, Yom Kippur, our Day of Atonement, becomes the day where Jesus died for your sins, and you have atonement. Passover is the holiday of our liberation, because Jesus died for our sins, and they'll interpret everything we do Jewishly in a Christian way.
This is all fascinating to me, and I should say that kind of a tangential aside is that my favorite history book I read in grad school was Ronald Schechter's book, Obstinate Hebrews, and I kept just thinking about that, like obstinate, and how this all relates to so many things I could talk about tangentially, but I want to just dive into specifically this question of Messianic Jews. In a Messianic Jewish congregation, are there people who are Christian and have just some kind of like cultural affinity for Israeli flags and latkes or whatever it is, and they are like, oh, I'm going to go to that church instead of a Christian-y seeming church? Or are the people actually at Baruch Hashem, the church or whatever this is, are they of Jewish origin? Like, who's there?
Okay, so it's a really important question, and generally speaking, at least half, and oftentimes much more than half of the attendees will be Gentile. Sometimes, I used to live in Philadelphia, and there the largest Messianic congregation was largely Jewish, and it's interesting that they had a policy of discouraging intermarriage because they wanted to maintain at least the Jewish identity of their congregation. But in reality, a large number of people going to these congregations are not Jewish for a number of reasons. Number one, they may be married to a Jew. You have to realize that this is one of the major groups that this movement appeals to. If you're an intermarried couple, do you go to a synagogue or a church? Well, here you have a perfect answer.
So this I am going to jump in on again, because I am an intermarried Jew, and I know many, and I do not know a single person who goes to anything like this.
Right, but
whereas I do know plenty who go to synagogues. So what I'm wondering about is just big picture, how popular in this day and age, and the reason I say in this day and age is because there were plenty of times in history, most of history, when if you wanted to participate in mainstream society, you would have to convert to Christianity, right? This is not the case in Toronto, in Montreal, in Chicago, in New York. This is not the case today. You can participate in mainstream society as a practicing Jew. You can be secular. You have all sorts of different things you can be. How big of a deal today is this thing you're talking about? And specifically, how big of a deal is it among Jews? Because if you're talking about among Gentiles, you could say, well, it's cultural appropriation of Jewishness, whatever. It's a different conversation. I'm saying, how big of a deal of this is this for Jews?
Well, let's put it this way. No one really has exact numbers because there's no real scientific polling or census that's been taken. But one of the things that we can measure accurately is infrastructure, meaning that if you go back to the 1970s, there were maybe a handful of these congregations in North America. Today, there are over 500, meaning that they've gone through an incredible amount of growth. For the past 36 years, I've been attending their annual international conferences. Every year here in North America, there are several umbrella groups of Messianic congregations. The largest is called the Union of Messianic Jewish Congregations. Every summer they have a huge conference, and I've been attending. I don't go to their sessions. I hang out in the lobby, and I just schmooze with people. And I've seen this movement growing dramatically and interestingly changing through the years, meaning that it's become more traditional in terms of their Jewish observance. What I wanted to point out is that obviously not all intermarried Jews will go to a Messianic congregation, but if you go to a Messianic congregation, almost all the Jews there are intermarried, which is
right. But it is interesting. But if this is like a tiny,
well, I wouldn't say it's tiny. I would say that we're talking about, the estimates range from, let's say, 70,000 to 250,000. It could be even more. It's very hard to measure.
Well, like when you're talking about these numbers, and I understand that they're not going to be precise because there hasn't been like a Gallup poll of this, but are you talking about, does that include Gentiles who attend?
No, I'm talking about specifically the Jews that are going.
Specifically the Jews, okay.
Yeah, there's a significant number of Jews. Put it this way. Whatever the number is, if you or anyone else were to find out that number of Jews were dying of malnutrition every year, no one would sit back and just say it's not a big deal. I mean, we're talking about
dead is different. This is going to be maybe just a philosophical disagreement, but I feel like dead is a little different from like there are also a certain number of Jews who are joining random cults. Or
for sure. And the truth is that studies have shown, for example, that about 25% of North American Buddhists, meaning non-Asian Buddhists, North American Buddhists, come from a Jewish background.
Now, is that from intermarriage with Asians?
Probably not, meaning that meditation, Eastern religions are extremely popular in North America, and they've drawn a huge number of Jews. And we've seen, as you mentioned, Jews are out of proportionately represented in all kinds of cults throughout the years. If you go back to the late 60s and the 1970s and 1980s, all of the popular and controversial cult groups had a huge percentage of Jewish people. But we're here to talk about the Messianic Jewish movement. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to mention one more thing. One of the reasons why so many Gentiles are attracted to these groups is because they themselves are looking for authenticity. And they believe that this is the most authentic expression of Christianity, meaning when these non-Jews ask themselves, well, what kind of a congregation would Jesus go to? They themselves probably realize it's probably much more likely to be a Messianic congregation than a Assemblies of God Pentecostal church or a Baptist church. So there are many reasons why non-Jews are attracted to this movement, aside from either being married to a Jew or because they think this is the most authentic kind of Christianity. But the third reason is because you have to understand that for many Christians, they will tell you they have a special burning in their heart to see Jewish people saved, meaning that they would like to see the whole world come to Jesus, but their language is they have a burden in their hearts for the Jewish people. They see the Jewish people as God's chosen people, and it's so tragic to see they believe Jews perishing without a knowledge of the Messiah. And so many Christians, many Gentile Christians who are active in Jewish evangelism will join these kinds of congregations because this is the place, if you want to reach Jews and convert them, this is ground zero. This is where it's going to happen as opposed to other kinds of churches.
Okay, so when I first became aware of Jews for Judaism, I was probably in university, and there was a lot of both Jews for Jesus in particular, which is a group of Messianic Jews, and Messianic Judaism in general was doing a lot of evangelizing on campus, on city streets, doing a lot of that. My sense of it is that it has died a lot, in that the Messianic organizations are doing things either more stealthily or on, whether it's online or not, and that they've basically decided that we are an organization, we are a movement of people and congregations, and we are internally focused and we care about this. But the proselytizing, the moving forward has largely maybe, not died down, but a lot of Jews have picked up on the fact that this is what this is, and they've become more savvy to it. So that has gone away a lot. You're nodding your head, and you're telling me that it's not true.
No,
so
the reality
give us
is,
the state of where things are at in 2024, and then we'll get it to this rally specifically.
Just very quickly. I forget who says this, that, they would ask, was it Billy the Kid, whoever it was, why do you rob banks? He said, that's where the money is. So the Christian missionaries themselves, years and years and years ago, said that the most fertile environment for reaching Jews now is online. So almost all missionary activity today takes place online, chat rooms, YouTube, websites.
So now we have this rally that is not online, that is very much in person, and Jews are asking themselves, and that's the question that we're really getting to focused over here today. Should we attend this rally? Should we be happy about it? Should we accept support for Israel at a time when it's needed the most from wherever it comes? Did you know about this rally before?
Yes.
Okay. What was your take on it? What was your sense? What were you telling people about this rally, and how should we think about it?
Well, it was pretty clear to me that the rally, if you look carefully at the copy in what the sponsoring organization put out, both in writing and in video, it's pretty clear that really they're assuming it's going to attract a non-Jewish audience, or at least Jewish Christians. It seems that's what this rally is going to be. It's going to be a rally basically of people who believe in Jesus. Now, they will be thrilled if non-believing Jews, meaning unsaved Jews, which is what they call us, UJs, unsaved Jews, they'd be thrilled if they showed up, because there's going to be a significant element of this program that's going to be evangelistic. I think I'll just share a quick story. When I was part of the Canadian Jewish Congress many years ago, during one of these crises dealing with the land of Israel, so there was a proposal that was brought up to have a huge prayer rally at the Air Canada Centre that would have 18,000 people coming, 9,000 Christians, 9,000 Jews. This is proposed by one of the Christian groups here in Toronto. And the Jewish community, to my shock, was taking it seriously, that we're going to join forces with this Christian group, or it was coalition of Christian groups, and have a joint prayer rally at the Air Canada Centre to pray for Israel. And I had to explain to them that this is a huge blunder, a huge community blunder, meaning that I think our messaging should have been, and it was ultimately, they accepted my analysis, that if Christians want to pray for Israel, Gesundheit, we support you, we think it's great, we think that Christians should pray for Israel, but to basically have a Christian proposed meeting to bring in 9,000 what we call Amcha Jews, regular typical Jews, to what's going to ultimately be a Christian prayer meeting is a blunder. Why is that? Because when you study the Christian Bible, one of the things that it says a number of times is that they want to provoke the Jews to jealousy. And that is one of their main conversion strategies. Now, if you've ever been to a Christian prayer service, I'm not talking about any Christian on the planet, I'm talking about evangelical Christians, meaning Christians that are behind these efforts to reach and convert Jews. Their prayer is passionate, it is exuberant. You have people that are crying.
You're saying that Jewish prayer is not passionate and exuberant?
Jewish prayer should be passionate and exuberant, and in some cases it is. But I would say that for your typical Jew, if you were to find 1,000 Jews on the street and ask them what their experience has been in a synagogue, and ask them, do you see people crying in your synagogue when they're praying? No. And you have to appreciate that this is exactly what the Christians want to do. They want to bring Jewish people into an experience where we are going to be provoked to jealousy. They want Jewish people to say, you know what? I wish we felt like that in our prayer. And so the question is, if you want to make a decision as a community, what kind of events do we co-sponsor? What kind of events do we cooperate with? What kind of events do we give our stamp of approval to To me, it would be absolutely absurd for a Jewish community to say, yes, we're going to participate with Chosen People Ministries in an event to stamp out anti-Semitism.
Is there a third way where Jews can kind of ally in a cynical way with a group like this and say, okay, maybe we have a shared goal. You're happy imagining we're going to convert to Christianity, which we know we're not about to do. We're happy that you don't want to see Israel wiped off the map, and we're going to sort of strategically, cynically do this. We know we're not about to convert to Christianity. Let's move forward. Or is it more like what is the correct approach? Is it more just to say, like, go away?
It's interesting. This particular organization, Chosen People Ministries, actually came to my office in Toronto about 25 years ago, wanting to put together a joint program with me. With Jews
it took them 25 years to put together one rally?
No, not a rally.
He
wanted to have a seminar dealing with atheism. And I said to them, I'm shocked. I'm shocked that you're so naive. Meaning that what's interesting is when I read some of the press dealing with this upcoming rally, the Jewish leadership was only concerned about giving them credibility. We don't want to give them credibility. And they seem totally oblivious to the real danger. Because the truth is, Phoebe, if you were to ask today Jews that have become Jews for Jesus, they will tell you that prior to that, they would have just said the same thing you just said. They would have said 5 years prior, I would never convert to Christianity. So the fact that people feel so strongly that they would never be converted is not proof that they're not going to be converted. But the point is that when you read what Chosen People Ministries are saying here, I got this off their video promoting this event. It says it's a night filled with messianic worship. Now, what that means in plain English is it's a night filled with Christian worship. Messianic is simply another word for Christian. The word Christ.
Yes, that's clear.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
yes.
I would say there's a difference because I think Avi had sent me a story about some organization on the west coast of Canada. They fight anti-Semitism. It's a Christian organization. And they joined forces with the Jewish community to advocate for, sort of fighting anti-Semitism.
Well, that's very small, but there are major international organizations, right? You have Pastor John Hagee, you have Christians United for Judaism, for Israel. You have International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, which was started by an Orthodox rabbi, Yechiel Eckstein.
Right.
And there's millions and millions of dollars in these huge organizations.
I think that's another discussion. I would say it's a nuanced discussion. It's much less clear-cut. And I would say that's very different than partnering with an organization whose stated purpose for hundreds of years, Chosen People Ministries was not the original name of their organization. It was originally called the American Board of Missions to the Jews.
Okay. I was going to say that just one thing this is making me think of in terms of fighting anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a multifaceted thing, as I think we all understand. And if this is indeed a community that's about half Jews by some definition, there is just materially a shared interest in fighting anti-Semitism because a racial anti-Semite is presumably couldn't care less how a Jew feels about Jesus, right?
Hard to say, but okay, possibly.
Well, I mean, measurably, like in various points in history, Jews who were practicing Christians were still considered Jews enough to be killed as Jews.
Today, for example, if you're a Messianic Jew, you're still identified as a Jew, and you still may pay the price of being a Jew. But in the Middle Ages, when a Jew totally converted to Christianity, they burnt their bridges, and that was it.
What about the conversos and all of this?
Yeah, that would be a different, let's say, topic. But I'm saying that people that fully converted and didn't maintain their Jewish identity, which was really the norm throughout Jewish history, the conversos still maintain.
I think what Phoebe's trying to get at is if there are people who are going to be the victims of anti-Semitism that are Messianic Jews and they want to stop anti-Semitism also or fight anti-Semitism, then we kind of have common cause.
I think it's great that this group wants to do something to make a statement against anti-Semitism. This group, Chosen People Ministries, is a group whose entire reason for existence is to convert Jews. That's all they do.
Right, agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
So
yes.
I would say that the fact that they want to have a program to rally against anti-Semitism, that's great. I'd say more power to them. But the idea of using that program as a way to bring Jews to come there and be exposed to their missionizing, to me, makes absolutely no sense. Meaning there's no reason for the Jewish community to support what they're doing publicly, to give them a shekayach, to give them shlishi in synagogue, to come to this event. It just doesn't make any sense. They themselves are saying that it's going to be an evening full of Christian worship, and the speakers are going to speak about how to pray for Israel. Now, again, you have to penetrate. What does that mean when these people pray for Israel? What does that mean? Well, praying for Israel in their terms means praying for the salvation of Israel, meaning praying for Jews to embrace Jesus, because their belief is that there's only one solution to anti-Semitism, and that's for Jews to embrace Jesus. That's their belief. And so again, all I'm saying is that if I was ever asked, should we attend such a rally? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They should rally. That's great. They should have such a rally against anti-Semitism. But again, to use it as an event where part of the agenda is going to be the conversion of Jews that attend, why in the world would we encourage Jews to expose themselves to such a danger? At most, what I would do is say that someone who works in my field should attend to monitor such a program. That I've done myself. I've gone to programs as a professional to monitor what's going on. But to send lay people, to send just your regular Jewish people, to such a program where they are the target of the program. The program is there to convert them. Why in God's good earth would anyone recommend that Jews attend such a program? There's no need for it. We have our own rallies against anti-Semitism. Christians have their own rallies. It doesn't always have to be together. And I would say that when the group that we're talking about to be together with is a group, again, whose stated and only purpose, not one of their agenda items, their only purpose is to convert Jews to Christianity, to me it's absolutely inconceivable that Jews should say, fine, we're going to attend to such a program.
Thank you so much for coming on. Michael Skobac, you can check out his writing and his work at jewsforjudaism.ca, I believe, and you can come back anytime.
Okay, thank you
so
both.
Much.
Thank you.
All the best.
Are you in the market for a new watch or a special piece of jewelry? Are you looking for the perfect engagement ring to pop the question? Atelier Lou has all this and more. Eric and the team at Atelier Lou can craft a piece for you, or you can select from some of the exclusive designers that they offer. From a simple bangle to a statement necklace, Atelier Lou can make you or your loved ones sparkle. Located in the heart of Westmount in Montreal or online at atelierlou.com, visit Atelier Lou for your next watch or jewelry purchase. And when you do, make sure to use promo code BON18 for 10% off your next purchase. That's atelierlou.com.
Let's move on to our nachas for this week. Phoebe, do you got any nachas?
I have something that's somewhere in the nachas broigas continuum, and I'm going to call it a huh. Okay, that's what falls right between a nachas and a broigas, which is that Joe Roberts posted that he and his family have decided to make Aliyah.
Well,
he tweeted it out.
I guess using the law of return will be a good way to decide for the public to see.
So we will find out.
Yes,
the question that has been on Canadian Jews and others' minds for some time of Joe Roberts' Jewishness to be outsourced to better authorities than your silly podcast hosts. Someone's looking into it, not me, because I have had a bunch of people message me in various capacities to be like, why are you not dropping everything you're doing to become an investigative journalist, figuring out Joe Roberts' family history. And I'm like, because I don't care enough to do that, but maybe the bots that are now unemployed because they can't be trying to influence U.S. elections anymore are going to be repurposed for figuring out Joe Roberts' Judaism. So, the bot rabbis, bring on the bot rabbis, or don't. I don't know.
Excellent.
What have you got, Avi?
I have an article from last week from the New York Times titled "A Celebration of Frank London's Music Will Be Missing One Thing: Him." Subhead is the trumpeter, composer, and band leader who helped revitalize klezmer is battling cancer, but his work hasn't slowed and his longtime associates are rallying around him. And it's talking about Frank London, who I've known for quite a long time, who was the former artistic director of Klez Canada up in the Laurentian Mountains, a genius musician, performer, trumpeter, band leader, all of the things. He is fighting a rare form of cancer. He has multiple bands, and they came together for a concert in support of him this past Monday. It's a wonderful article. You get to learn about this trumpeter, this musician, and his lifelong attachment and affinity for Jewish music and how it came to be. The concert is in the past already, but it was in New York and it was super sold out. There is a live stream available on YouTube. You should go check it out because it is 3 hours of incredible music devoted to somebody whose life was really all about incredible music. So that is my nachas, is for Frank London, and here to him getting healthy, and the music should continue. Sounds wonderful. Thank you, Avi. A programming note, we will not be recording next week. It is Shavuot, so if you are waiting for your episode of Bonjour Chai next week, you'll have to wait a little while longer. That's about it. Thank you for listening to Bonjour Chai for the week ending June 8th, Shabbat Parashat Bamidbar. The show is produced by Michael Freeman and edited by Zach Kaufman. The executive producer for CJN Podcast is Michael Freeman. Our music is by So Called. We are a project of the Jewish Living Lab and are distributed by the CJN Podcast Network. You can listen to all our past episodes on our page at thecjn.ca/bonjour, and you can subscribe to the podcast and automatically receive all episodes on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love it if you told a friend about Bonjour Chai. It is one of the best ways we get new listeners. As always, you can email us with comments at bonjour@thecjn.ca.
Y'all remember that joke from Airplane? The old lady asked for some light reading.
How about this leaflet, famous Jewish sports legends?
But in actuality, that's changing. Jews are crushing it in sports around the world, and we are here to celebrate them.
Sandy Koufax gets his 10th strikeout.
Zach Hyman, his first career hat trick. 41 points for Diddy Avdia. It's Sue Bird's building.
I'm Gabe.
And I'm Jamie.
We love Jews and we love sports, but most of all, we love kvelling over Jews in sports.
Together we host Menschwarmers, the longest running Jewish sports podcast in the world. Listen and subscribe at thecjn.ca and wherever you find your podcasts.